An 81-year-old woman finds an unmarked box hidden in her attic. Inside are documents that prove her family's entire legacy is built on a lie. A child was erased, names were changed, and the person who inherits everything has no legal right to any of it. This is the story of how one box destroyed a family name that survived for over a century. Margaret had one job left in life: protect the family name. At 81 years old, she'd outlived nearly everyone. Her parents, gone. Her husband, gone. Even her siblings who used to argue about family stories around the dinner table were all buried now. What remained was the house, the name, and the responsibility of making sure both survived her. For generations, her family name meant something in their town. It opened doors, it commanded respect. People didn't just know the name, they revered it. But here's what Margaret didn't know. That respect was built on a secret so dangerous it had been hidden for over 50 years, and she was about to find it. Now, you need to understand something about Margaret's attic. This wasn't some mysterious, cobweb-filled space full of locked trunks and forgotten memories. At least that's what she'd always believed. It was just storage. Holiday decorations, old furniture, boxes of papers nobody needed anymore. She'd been up there dozens of times. Nothing unusual, nothing hidden. Which is exactly why what happened next is so disturbing. Because the box she found that day, she'd never seen it before in her life. Margaret wasn't looking for secrets. She was looking for space. She decided to downsize, a practical decision for a woman her age. Clean out the attic, donate what she didn't need, simplify her life. She moved slowly up those narrow stairs, dust particles floating in the afternoon light. Everything felt familiar, comfortable even, until she saw it. Tucked behind a row of suitcases she hadn't opened since the 1980s was a small cardboard box. No label, no handwriting, just discolored ribbon tied around it. The kind hospitals used decades ago for records and personal belongings. Margaret froze. Not because the box looked dangerous, but because she didn't recognize it. And after living in that house for 81 years, that should have been impossible. She carried the box downstairs. Her hands were steady, for now. She sat at the dining table where 4 generations of her family had gathered for Sunday dinners, holidays, arguments, and celebrations. Then she untied the ribbon. Inside were documents, old ones, carefully folded and preserved like someone wanted to make sure they'd survive. At first glance, they looked harmless. Medical records, legal forms, a few black and white photographs with curled edges. Nothing that screamed scandal, nothing that suggested destruction. But Margaret's hands started shaking anyway, because she recognized the handwriting. Now here's where this story takes its first dark turn. The handwriting belonged to someone Margaret hadn't thought about in over 50 years, someone whose name had been quietly erased from family conversations long ago, someone who, according to the official family history, didn't matter. But as Margaret began reading those documents, she realized something horrifying. This person didn't just matter. This person changed everything. The first document was a birth certificate, a date, a hospital, a child's name. Margaret's heart slowed as she noticed the inconsistencies. A surname crossed out in pen, another surname written over it in different ink, a signature that didn't match the others. These weren't clerical errors. These were corrections, made by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The photographs told the rest of the story. One showed a newborn wrapped in a blanket Margaret recognized immediately. The same blanket that had been passed down through her family for generations, the same blanket wrapped around her when she was born. Another photograph showed a woman's face, younger, scared, holding that baby with an expression that Margaret's stomach turned, because she recognized that woman too. And suddenly memory crashed back with brutal clarity. She remembered the year, 1954. She'd been 19 years old. She remembered the circumstances. a family member who'd gone away for health reasons for several months. She remembered the whispers that followed when that person returned. Thinner, quieter, different. She remembered how quickly certain questions had been silenced, how certain explanations had been accepted because nobody wanted to examine them too closely. Back then, Margaret had been young, naive. She trusted the adults around her, trusted doctors, elders, official documents, trusted that what she was told was the truth. But now at 81, she could see what she'd been protected from, what she'd been complicit in, even without knowing it. Here's what those documents revealed. A child had been born in Margaret's family, but that child wasn't raised within it. Not because of tragedy, not because of necessity, because of choice. A deliberate, calculated decision made to preserve appearances, to protect the family name from something they considered inconvenient. An unmarried daughter, a secret pregnancy, a child that didn't fit the image they'd spent generations building. But the family didn't just send the baby away. They erased it. The child's identity was altered. Names were changed on official documents. Birth records were amended. Connections were severed and rewritten. The family tree that Margaret had memorized, that hung in frames in the hallway, that defined who belonged and who inherited, it was fiction. But here's what Margaret's blood ran cold. If these documents were accurate, then the person currently recognized as the rightful heir to the family estate, the person everyone assumed would inherit everything, carried the family name, but not the family blood. And somewhere else, unknown and unacknowledged, was someone who did. Someone who'd been written out of existence before they ever had a chance to belong. Someone who had no idea they were owed an inheritance, a history, a name. Margaret sought in silence for a long time. She thought about every family gathering, every story passed down as sacred truth, every moment of pride attached to a name that had survived wars, recessions, and personal loss without breaking. But what unsettled her most wasn't the deception itself. It was how many people must have known. The signatures on those documents weren't just from doctors and nurses. They include family members, witnesses, people Margaret had loved and trusted. People who had agreed, in writing, to reshape reality for the sake of legacy. People who had taken the truth and hidden it in an attic, hoping it would die there. When Margaret finally shared what she'd found, the damage was immediate. Family members dismissed it at first. Old papers don't mean anything. Then they questioned it. How do you know they're real? Then they grew angry. But not at the past, at her. The idea that everything they believed about their lineage might be wrong felt threatening. The legacy they'd inherited, the pride, the status, the identity, was suddenly conditional. And conditions invite collapse. Legal questions followed. Was the current will valid? Who actually had rights to the estate? Could the erased child, now in their 70s, even be found? Emotional questions came too. Why did they do this? Who made the decision? Were our grandparents monsters or just products of their time? Relationships strained. Accusations flew. The name that had once unified them became a point of division. And Margaret watched it all unfold with a strange, quiet calm. Because she understood something now that she hadn't at 20. She hadn't destroyed the family legacy. She'd uncovered what it really was. What truly ended the legacy wasn't the contents of that box. It was the realization that legacies built on omission cannot survive exposure. At 81 years old, Margaret learned the hardest lesson of her life. A family name isn't sustained by silence. It's sustained by truth. And once the truth is found, even in the quietest corner of an attic, it decides what survives next. The box Margaret found didn't just contain papers. It contained a choice that had echoed across generations. And now you have to ask yourself, if you found something like this in your family's past, what would you do? Would you protect the legacy, or would you choose the truth? Let me know in the comments what you do. And if this story made you think twice about family secrets, share it with someone who needs to hear it.